Ilara's quarters in the maintenance shaft made Earth's refugee camps look luxurious. The air recyclers wheezed asthmatically, circulating a metallic tang that clung to her throat. A nutrient dispenser in the wall offered gelatinous cubes labeled Universal Protein Supplement, safe for carbon-based life. She'd have to find real food tomorrow. After Vexnar's departure, his scaly knuckles leaving dents in her door, Ilara pulled the crumpled admission letter from her pocket. Her grandmother had pressed it into her hands just 2 weeks ago, her eyes filled with an urgency Ilara had never seen before. "They chose you for a reason," she'd said, her weathered hands trembling slightly. "Remember what I taught you about watching before moving." Ilara activated her portable terminal, the outdated Earth technology looking like a child's toy compared to what she'd glimpsed in the academy. The station's information network reluctantly granted her limited access. She quickly discovered why the aliens had laughed at her physical assessment. The weakest Draconian cadet could lift 3 times their body weight. The Zinthari could move faster than human eyes could track. The Akrelians had exoskeletons that could withstand small arms fire. Humans weren't just underdogs, they were practically irrelevant. A soft chime interrupted her research. An anonymous message appeared on her screen. "Training area, 12B. Second rotation. Come alone." Sleep seemed impossible anyway. Ilara memorized the station schematic and slipped into the corridor. The massive habitat ring hummed with activity despite the late hour. Many species required minimal rest or operated on entirely different circadian rhythms. She passed a group of Mevlarian cadets whose crystalline bodies refracted the overhead lighting into mesmerizing patterns. They paused their conversation to stare at her, faceted eyes glittering with curiosity or contempt. She couldn't tell which. Training. Area 12B was supposedly decommissioned according to the public schematics. The door, however, slid open at her approach. Inside, the chamber was dimly lit and cavernous, its ceiling lost in shadow. In the center stood a figure so still it might have been a statue. Cathal, the Academy's legendary combat master. Up close he appeared even more unsettling than during orientation. His species was unknown, his age incalculable. His skin had the texture of ancient parchment stretched over an impossible geometry that seemed to shift subtly when viewed peripherally. "You are small," he observed, voice like stone grinding against stone, even for a human. "So I've been told," Ilara replied, refusing to be intimidated. "Repeatedly. Today." Cathal moved suddenly, too fast for her to track, and was behind her. "Your species is not without interesting qualities," he said. "The Academy did not admit you by mistake." "Then why am I here?" "That depends on you." Cathal gestured and the room transformed. Holographic figures materialized, combat recordings of Vexnar and other top students. "Watch," he commanded. For hours, Ilara observed matches from previous tournaments, forced to verbalize patterns she recognized. Dawn approached when Cathal finally dismissed her with cryptic instructions for tomorrow's combat class. As she navigated back to her quarters, exhaustion clouding her vision, Grand Marshal Zorthax emerged from across corridor, tentacles rippling with surprise at her presence. "Human," he said, multifaceted eyes narrowing. "The betting pools give you less than 8 rotations before withdrawal or medical evacuation. I have placed my wager accordingly." Ilara straightened her spine. "Sorry to disappoint, Marshal, but I didn't come all this way to leave." His mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "We shall see. The first casualty of war is often optimism." The infirmary's antiseptic smell couldn't mask the distinctive copper tang of Corv's ichor. Ilara sat on an examination platform, flexing her bruised fingers while a medical drone scanned her for fractures. Across the room, 3 sentinel medics clustered around their injured classmate, chittering in their native dialect. Occasionally one would glance in Ilara's direction, compound eyes flashing with undisguised hostility. "You're either very brave or catastrophically stupid," came a melodic voice. Alara turned to see a small, luminescent being perched on the adjacent platform. Nixus, one of the Lumidians. Her translucent skin pulsed with subtle bioluminescent patterns, currently cycling through concerned amber tones. "I'm still deciding which myself," Alara replied. "No one has damaged a sentinel joint connection in combat class in 3 cycles," Nixus said, leaning closer. "Certainly not a first-phase student." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And definitely not a species with your limitations." The medical drone finished its assessment and departed with a perfunctory beep. Alara slid off the platform, wincing as her weight settled on bruised legs. "I got lucky," she said carefully. Nixus's light patterns shifted to a skeptical blue. "Sentinels have exoskeletons with 14 redundant defensive configurations. You struck the exact transition point between tertiary and quaternary plates, the only vulnerable spot in that stance." She tilted her head. "That's not luck, that's impossible." Before Alara could respond, the infirmary doors hissed open. Instructor Vraxus entered, his gravitic stabilizers humming as his massive form navigated the narrower interior spaces. Behind him loomed Vexnar, arms folded across his armored chest. "Human," Vraxus rumbled. "The combat analytics have been interesting." Vexnar snorted, a sound like superheated steam escaping a vent. "A statistical anomaly, nothing more." "Perhaps," Vraxus conceded. "Nevertheless, the injury to Cadet Corv requires explanation." Alara straightened her posture despite screaming. Muscles. "As I said during the match, sir, I observed a vulnerability and reacted." "Impossible," Vexnar interjected. "Sentinel anatomy is not taught until 3rd-phase combat physiology. Even if you somehow studied ahead, human reaction time is far too slow to—" "Not impossible," interrupted a raspy voice from the doorway. Cathal materialized as if from nowhere. "Merely improbable." The room seemed to cool several degrees in the combat master's presence. Even Vexnar fell silent. "What do you mean, Master Cathal?" Vraxus asked. "Human neural architecture differs from established galactic patterns," Cathal explained. "Their threat response systems evolved on a predator-heavy world and operate on unusual principles." Vexnar's scaled brow furrowed. "You suggest this was an evolved response, not technique?" "I suggest," Cathal said, fixing his unsettling gaze on Alara, "that assumptions are dangerous, particularly about unknown quantities." After they departed, Nixus slipped from the examination table and approached Alara. Her bioluminescence had shifted to a curious violet. "Cathal has never intervened in a disciplinary matter for a first-phase student," she whispered. "Do you know him?" "We've spoken once," Alara admitted, recalling the strange training session. Nixus's lights pulsed rapidly. "There's more happening here than combat training." She hesitated, then extended a delicate, glowing hand. "I have quarters in the xenobiology wing. The environmental controls might suit your species better than wherever they've stashed you." Alara accepted the offered hand, surprised by its warmth. "Why help me?" "Because," Nixus replied, lights shifting to a determined green. Cathal wasn't the only one watching the combat feeds. There were encrypted transmissions to 6 different systems, including Earth. "Someone's very interested in what you did today." Alara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the infirmary's temperature. "And you want to know why?" Nixus smiled, revealing teeth that glowed like tiny stars. "Don't you?" The pit reeked of adrenaline-equivalent biochemicals from a dozen different species. Alara's eyes stung from the acrid smoke of illicit stimulants being consumed in dark corners. The impromptu arena, circular, 30 feet across, with walls of salvaged hull plating, pulsed with spectator energy. Betting terminals flickered as odds adjusted in real time. "Final wagers," announced a serpentine Zarelian whose scales had been modified with glowing credit indicators. "Human versus the triumvirate, place your bets." Alara's 3 opponents stalked the perimeter, a Vorlak berserker with retractable bone blades, a Comite psychic with temporal distortion implants, and a genetically enhanced thresher whose reinforced skeleton made them nearly unbreakable. No rules, no safety protocols, no limits except unconsciousness or surrender. From the crowd, Vexnar watched with cold calculation. His inner circle, elite students with family connections to draconian nobility, whispered among themselves, occasionally laughing. They'd designed this matchup meticulously. Not to kill her, that would trigger official investigation, but to ensure she'd be crippled enough to withdraw from the academy. The Comet made the first move, attempting to trap Alara in a time bubble that would slow her movements to a crawl. She recognized the distinctive hand gesture from Cathal's training simulations and dove sideways, rolling beneath the arc of the temporal effect. The Vorlak charged through the space where she'd been, bone blades extended. Physics became Alara's ally. The Vorlak's momentum carried it directly into the Thresher's guard. The collision bought her seconds to assess angles, distances, weaknesses. Humans couldn't match alien strength or speed. But millions of years of evolution as both predator and prey had optimized human brains for one critical skill: pattern recognition under extreme stress. As the Thresher flung the Vorlak aside, Alara moved with precise efficiency, not toward either opponent, but toward the wall. She timed her approach perfectly, using the curved surface to redirect her momentum just as the Comite attempted another temporal trap. The distortion field missed her by millimeters and caught the charging Vorlak instead, slowing it to a crawl. The crowd roared in surprise. Vexnar's expression darkened. Alara had no time to celebrate. The Thresher closed in, nearly impervious. To conventional attacks, she needed leverage, not strength. As the behemoth swung a devastating haymaker, Alara stepped inside its guard, not away, and redirected its massive arm into the wall. The impact cracked the metal plating and dislocated the Thresher's shoulder with a sickening pop. One down. 2 to go. The Comite, recognizing the human's threat level, stopped trying for temporal traps and unleashed a psychic assault instead. Pain lanced through Alara's mind. Her vision fragmented. She stumbled. The time-slowed Vorlak was regaining normal speed, bone blades gleaming under the harsh lights. Surrounded, disoriented, Alara did what no combat algorithm would predict. She relaxed completely, surrendering to the psychic assault rather than fighting it. The Comite, expecting resistance, overextended their attack. The momentary confusion was all she needed. Alara lunged not at the Comet, but at the recovering Vorlak. She slipped beneath its blades and used its own arm as a lever, spinning it directly into the Comet's psychic field. The Vorlak's biochemistry reacted violently to the mental intrusion. It howled and slashed wildly, catching the Comite across the chest. The crowd fell silent as both aliens collapsed. 3 opponents, neutralized without landing a single direct blow. As Alara stood alone in the center of the pit, bleeding from a dozen minor cuts but fundamentally unbroken, she locked eyes with Vexnar. His expression had changed from dismissive contempt to something far more dangerous: genuine hatred. Later that night, bruised and exhausted, she returned to find Cathal waiting in her quarters. "You've accelerated the timeline," he said without preamble. "They will kill you now." Inside the ghost chamber, time behaved differently. Alara had entered hours ago according to her chronometer, but her body felt as though she'd been training for weeks. Her muscles burned with a deep fatigue that transcended normal exhaustion. "Again," Cathal commanded, his form shimmering slightly, at the edges as he reset the simulation. The chamber itself defied conventional physics. Its boundaries seemed to extend infinitely in all directions despite the station's structural limitations. Holographic opponents materialized from nothing, yet when they struck, the impacts were devastatingly real. "You're holding back," Cathal observed as Alara dispatched a simulated Acrelian. "Your neural pathways are capable of faster adaptation." "I'm moving as quickly as I can," she protested, wiping blood from a split lip. Cathal made a sound like grinding stone. His species, Equivalent of laughter. No. You are moving as quickly as you believe you can. Human potential exceeds your understanding. He approached a control panel that pulsed with symbols from no language Alara recognized. Observe. A projection materialized, a double helix, structure that Alara recognized as DNA, but with anomalous patterns highlighted in pulsing red. Human genomic structure, Cathal explained, modified approximately 30,000 years ago. My species, the archivists, encountered yours when you were still primarily hunter-gatherers. Alara stared at the projection. You're saying humans were engineered? Enhanced, Cathal corrected. Your species possessed unusual neurological properties, pattern recognition capabilities that no algorithm could replicate, the ability to form novel connections between seemingly unrelated stimuli. We accentuated these traits. The implications staggered her. Why? The architects required a counterbalance. Cathal manipulated the controls, and the projection shifted to show a massive reptilian structure, draconian DNA. The warrior species were becoming too powerful, too predictable in their evolution. The architects value equilibrium above all. These architects, they're your masters? Cathal's form rippled with what might have been discomfort. They are the oldest intelligence in the galaxy. They engineered conflict to drive evolution, then cultivated peace to preserve achievements, a cycle spanning millions of years. The projections vanished. Cathal turned his unsettling gaze directly on Alara. The Draconians have broken the cycle. They refuse the equilibrium phase. Their expansion threatens a dozen developing species, including yours. So Earth sent me here as some kind of countermeasure? Alara asked, pieces falling into place. Earth does not know the full truth, Cathal said. Only fragments remain in your species' collective memory. Your grandmother carries one such fragment. Outside the chamber in the normal time stream, Nixis had grown increasingly worried. Alara had vanished without a trace after training. Security logs showed no record of her movements. Using her species' natural affinity for electronic systems, Nixis infiltrated the station's classified databases. What she discovered chilled her luminescent blood. Files on Project Evolution, a multi-millennium experiment involving humans, Draconians, and a dozen other species. Records of Cathal's true identity as the last archivist. And most disturbing, plans for an architect weapon capable of species-wide neural reconfiguration, requiring a specific activation sequence generated only by extreme human-draconian combat adaptation. As she downloaded the classified files, an alert triggered. Ambassador Zerl's security protocols had detected her intrusion. Nixis had minutes, maybe seconds, before they traced her location. She sent an encrypted emergency message to Zalvex, the estranged younger sibling of Vexnar, who had secretly contacted her days earlier with suspicions about their father's true agenda. Then she ran toward Alara's quarters, hoping she wasn't too late. The medical bay's ceiling swirled in dizzying patterns as Alara regained consciousness. Her mind felt fractured, invaded by memories that weren't her own. Ancient star maps, extinct species, civilizations rising and falling across millennia. She's stabilizing, came a clinical voice. Neural patterns normalizing. Alara tried to sit up but found herself immobilized by a containment field. Through the haze, she recognized Dr. Selvig, the Academy's chief xenobiologist, conferring with a medical drone. Neither had noticed she was awake. The human brain shouldn't have survived that level of psychic intrusion, Selvig muttered, studying holographic scans floating above Alara's bed. Fascinating redundancies in her neural architecture, almost as if designed to withstand tampering. The drone chirped a response in machine code. No, don't notify security yet, Selvig replied. I want to run more tests before Ambassador Zerl gets involved. Alara closed her eyes, pretending unconsciousness as footsteps approached. A cool, damp hand touched her forehead, distinctive of Lumidian physiology. Nixis. I need a moment alone with my roommate, Nixis told Dr. Selvig. her voice carrying the harmonic undertones Lumidians used when exercising their limited empathic suggestion. After a brief hesitation, Selvig departed. The moment the door sealed, Nixis deactivated the containment field. "We have 4 minutes before his cognitive resistance overcomes my suggestion," she whispered, helping Alara sit up. "Can you walk?" Alara swung her legs over the edge, fighting a wave of vertigo. "I'll manage. What happened?" "The Mind Weaver in your match used an illegal psychic augmenter," Nixis explained, supporting Alara's weight. "But that's not important. Now, I found something." The medical bay door slid open, revealing a lithe draconian with scales in shimmering copper tones rather than Vexnar's obsidian black. Where Vexnar exuded brutish strength, this draconian moved with calculated precision. "Zalvex," Nixis acknowledged with visible relief. "You got my message." "Barely," they replied, voice surprisingly melodic for a draconian. "Father's security team is sweeping the entire communication network. We need to move now." Alara shook her head, trying to clear the lingering disorientation. "You're Vexnar's sibling?" "Clutchmate," Zalvex corrected. "Though my brother would prefer to forget our connection." They produced a small device that projected a security corridor overlay. "This route will bypass the main surveillance nodes." As they navigated the station's service passages, Nixis explained her discoveries: the classified files, Project Evolution, the Architect's weapon. Zalvex filled in crucial gaps. "The Draconians weren't always conquerors," they explained. "My ancestral memories show our original role as ecosystem stabilizers, apex predators that prevented any single species from dominating planetary environments." "What changed?" Alara asked as they ducked into a maintenance tunnel. "The Architects," Zalvex said bitterly. "They enhanced our aggression, our territorial instincts, creating the perfect expansion force. Then they enhanced humans with the perfect adaptive countermeasure. 2 species, weaponized against each other, generating conflict patterns that power their technologies. They emerged in an abandoned storage bay. Zalvex sealed the entrance, then activated a scrambler field to block surveillance. My father discovered fragments of this truth decades ago," they continued. "But rather than resist manipulation, he embraced it. The Draconian Empire now serves the Architects willingly, believing they'll be granted dominion once the neural weapon is activated." "And Earth?" Alara asked. Nixis's bioluminescence flickered anxiously. "Earth's leadership remains unaware. But someone on your planet knows enough to send you here, positioning a human champion for the final confrontation." "My grandmother," Alara whispered, remembering Cathal's words. "But why me?" Zalvex's reptilian eyes narrowed. "Because, human, your neural patterns are unique even among your kind. The medical scans confirm it. Your brain structure is the perfect key for the Architect's lock." The station trembled slightly as announcement speakers activated. "All cadets report to Assembly Hall for mandatory tournament briefing." "It's beginning," Nixis said quietly. "The final phase." Grand Marshal Zorthax's office resembled an aquarium, designed by a nightmare architect. Walls of rippling liquid metal contained suspended artifacts from 1,000 conquered worlds. Alara stood before his hovering command platform, trying not to stare at what appeared to be a preserved human skull from some ancient battlefield. "Quite the predicament we find ourselves in," Zorthax said, his tentacles arranging themselves in what his species considered a confidential posture. "Your advancement to the finals has created complications." "I earned my place," Alara replied evenly. "Indeed. Through methods that have generated considerable speculation." One tentacle extended, activating a holographic display showing betting odds and financial projections. "The Academy administration has invested heavily in certain tournament outcomes. Your continued success threatens substantial losses." Understanding dawned. "You're asking me to throw the match." "Requesting," Zorthax corrected, "with appropriate compensation." A data crystal materialized between his tentacles. 5 million galactic credits, enough to establish your family comfortably on any developed world. Far more than tournament. Victory would provide. Ilara thought of her grandmother's weathered face, of Earth's struggle to gain galactic recognition. And if I refuse? The Marshal's bioluminescent spots pulsed with cold amusement. Then I would be concerned for your safety. Accidents happen frequently in final rounds, sometimes permanent ones. After Ilara left, barely maintaining her composure, she found a secluded alcove to process the blatant corruption. She had barely collected her thoughts when a shadow fell across her. Human. Ambassador Zerl's voice carried the distinctive harmonic rumble of draconian aristocracy. Walk with me. Unlike his son, Ambassador Zerl moved with sophisticated grace. His ceremonial armor bore the insignia of 100 diplomatic missions, each representing a world that had eventually submitted to draconian protection. My son underestimates you, he said without preamble as they walked through a diplomatic wing few students ever accessed. A mistake I won't repeat. Is this where you threaten me too? Ilara asked. Ambassador Zerl's laugh resembled distant thunder. Threats are for inferiors. I offer opportunity. He activated a privacy field around them. The draconian ascendancy requires symbolic representation from various species. Properly managed client races who demonstrate unique potential. Pets, you mean? Partners, he corrected smoothly. With considerable privileges. Your performance has identified you as suitable for such elevation. Give my son appropriate challenge, enough to showcase his superior combat lineage, before accepting inevitable defeat. In return, you would serve as humanity's representative in the Imperial Court. Ilara maintained a neutral expression. And Earth? Would receive preferential status during integration. His reptilian eyes gleamed. Minimal population reduction. Cultural preservation in designated reserves. Bile rose in Ilara's throat, but she nodded thoughtfully. I'll consider your generous offer. After the ambassador departed, Ilara had barely 15 minutes before Cathal materialized beside her in the corridor, seemingly from empty air. Their corruption is predictable, the ancient master said. Their vision small. And yours isn't? Ilara challenged, anger finally surfacing. You've been manipulating me since I arrived, using me to trigger some ancient weapon. Cathal's form shimmered slightly. The timeline accelerates. The architect's weapon must not activate, but neither can draconian expansion continue unchecked. Earth depends on your victory, not for pride or politics, but survival. Ilara laughed bitterly. So everyone wants me to navigate their preferred outcome. What about what I want? Irrelevant, Cathal stated. You are the catalyst now. The choice is merely how you catalyze. After Cathal departed, Ilara made her way to the medical wing where Nixus remained connected to life support, her luminescence dangerously dim after Vexnar's brutal assault. They're all lying to me, Ilara whispered to her unconscious friend. Using me for their own ends. Nixus's monitoring equipment beeped, softly. On the view screen above her bed, a message briefly flickered. Meet us. Maintenance shaft, 7G, midnight. Bring nothing. Signed with a distinctive copper-colored scale, Zalvex's mark. The arena's energy shield shimmered as another impact sent tremors through the reinforced floor. Vexnar's augmented strength had already created a spiderweb of cracks in the supposedly indestructible combat surface. His movements had become increasingly erratic, the combat stimulants gradually overwhelming his disciplined fighting style with primal aggression. Stand still, he roared after his 7th consecutive miss, scales flushing crimson with rage. Ilara circled cautiously, maintaining precise distance. That would defeat the purpose, she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. In the 5th minute of combat, something changed in Vexnar's eyes, a moment of clarity breaking through the chemical haze. He stepped back, regarding her with newfound calculation. You're not fighting, he observed. You're analyzing. Ilara didn't respond but shifted her stance fractionally. The movement caught Vexnar's attention. Your species, he continued, circling more deliberately now, lacks everything that defines a warrior race. No natural weapons, no enhanced strength. No specialized combat adaptations. His voice dropped. Yet here you stand in the final round undefeated. In the observation chamber high above the arena, Nixis and Zalvex worked frantically to override the architect's systems. Nixis's bioluminescence had dimmed to barely perceptible levels as she channeled her remaining energy into the station's neural interface. The harvesters are calibrating to their combat patterns, Zalvex warned, monitoring fluctuating energy signatures. We're running out of time. Nixis's tendrils interface directly with the ancient technology. Cathal is moving toward the primary chamber. If he activates the override... Back in the arena, Vexnar launched a new attack strategy, controlled, economical movements designed to gradually restrict Alara's maneuvering space. The audience, initially raucous, had fallen into stunned silence as the match extended far beyond expected duration. My father promised me you would break easily, Vexnar said, landing a glancing blow that sent Alara sliding across the fractured floor. A primitive species, suitable only for demonstration purposes. Alara regained her footing, ignoring the burning pain in her shoulder. Sounds like you've been manipulated your entire life. Something flickered across Vexnar's face. Doubt, perhaps. You know nothing of my purpose. I know the architects enhanced your species for aggression, she countered, just as they enhanced humans for adaptation. We're both weapons in their arsenal. Vexnar hesitated, scales rippling with conflicting emotions. Lies. Ask yourself why your father was so insistent you take those combat stimulants, Alara pressed. Why this match had to happen exactly this way. The arena lights flickered as the station's power grid fluctuated. In the control chamber, Cathal had activated the gravitational distortion field, creating crushing pressure in the arena. Alara felt her knees buckling as the artificial gravity doubled, then tripled. Vexnar, with his superior physical strength, remained standing, though visibly strained. The stimulants in his system gave him temporary resistance to the crushing force. Through the pain, Alara's mind achieved perfect clarity. Each neural pathway optimized for the singular challenge before her. The human brain, evolved through millions of years of being both predator and prey, found patterns where others saw only chaos. She recognized the fluctuation signature in the gravity field, the same pattern Cathal had shown her in the ghost chamber when demonstrating the architect's technology. There was a node point, a singularity where the field inverted. Vexnar staggered toward her, fighting the increasing gravitational pressure. His expression had changed completely, the hatred replaced by grim understanding as he too recognized the manipulation. They're using us, he growled, his massive frame beginning to bow under the crushing force. Alara nodded, pain making speech difficult. They always were. The gravitational anomaly reached critical threshold. Vexnar, standing closer to the focal point, would be crushed completely in seconds. Understanding passed between them, a moment of perfect clarity, transcending species. Difference. The off-balance throw, Alara gasped. From the third training sequence. Vexnar's eyes widened with recognition, then narrowed with determination. With his remaining strength he lunged, not to attack but to position himself precisely. End this, he commanded. The gravitational vortex tore at the arena's structure. Emergency sirens wailed as spectators evacuated in panic. Ambassador Zerl shouted commands into his communication device while Earth's delegates huddled together, confusion evident on their faces. In the exposed architect's chamber, now visible through the fractured ceiling, Cathal manipulated ancient controls. Complete. The sequence, his voice boomed through the arena. Finish him and fulfill your purpose. With Vexnar positioned at the critical junction point, everything aligned for Alara's final move. The decisive strike that would generate the precise neural pattern the architect's weapon required for activation. Time seemed to slow. Alara saw multiple futures branching before her. Strike as trained, become the weapon she was engineered to be, refuse to strike, be crushed alongside Vexnar in the gravitational anomaly, attempt escape, abandon both their species to their fates. None were acceptable. There's always another option, her grandmother had told her years ago. That's humanity's gift. We see patterns others miss. Understanding crystallized. The architect's technology responded to specific neural patterns, but perhaps not only combat patterns. Human brains evolved for something beyond mere survival. They evolved for connection. Ilara made her choice. Instead of striking Vexnar, she reached out her hand. "Trust me," she said. After a moment's hesitation, the Draconian prince grasped her offered hand. Contact between their species, not in combat but in cooperation, created an unexpected neural signature that rippled through the harvesting field. In the control room, Nixus gasped as the readings spiraled into unknown configurations. "It's working. The harmonic disruption is—" The station shuddered violently. In the architect's chamber, Cathal's form destabilized as the ancient beings themselves materialized. Luminous entities of pure energy, whose shapes constantly shifted between geometric impossibilities. Impossible, their collective voice resonated. Not through sound, but directly into the minds of all present. "The pattern is corrupted." Ilara stepped forward, still holding Vexinar's scaled hand. "Not corrupted, evolved." She addressed the stadium through the emergency broadcast system, her voice carrying to billions watching across the galaxy. For millennia, the architects engineered conflict between our species to harvest specific neural patterns. They designed humans for adaptation, draconians for dominance, creating perfect opponents whose combat would power their technologies of control. The architects' forms pulsed with chaotic energy as their harvesting system failed to process the unexpected neural pattern generated by cooperation rather than conflict. "But evolution has its own agenda," Ilara continued. "Humans didn't just evolve to recognize patterns in combat. We evolved to recognize patterns in connection, in cooperation, in empathy." Zalvex's voice came through the communication system. "The disruption equation is uploaded. 10 seconds to broadcast." The architects surged toward Ilara and Vexinar, but the gravitational anomaly, now inverted by their modified neural output, held them at bay. "You engineered us as weapons," Vexinar declared, his voice joining Ilara's in the broadcast. "But we choose a different purpose." The equation, a mathematical expression of the cooperative neural pattern they had generated, pulsed through the station's transmission array. It spread outward at light speed, reaching every architect technology across the galaxy simultaneously. The energy beings howled in silent fury as their forms began to destabilize. Their carefully engineered cycle of conflict, maintained across millions of years, collapsed under the weight of one unanticipated variable: the choice to cooperate rather than fight. "What did you do?" Cathal demanded, his ancient form also beginning to dissolve. Ilara met his gaze steadily. "The one thing you never simulated in your combat models." She glanced at Vexnar, then back at the fading architects. "We chose peace." The last of the energy beings dispersed. The gravitational anomalies stabilized. Throughout the galaxy, weapons of mass control designed by the architects went dormant simultaneously. In the sudden silence of the arena, a draconian and a human stood together, not as victor and vanquished but as equals who had glimpsed a different future.